Hello everyone, I'm Joseph Terry. Thanks for joining me for part 2 of my California State University Channel Islands Capstone IT499. This is the more freestyle approach. I'm going to show you the back end and everything that I did to actually get my capstone working. We'll start with the website. This website was created with the purpose of showing that a company could host and have everything they needed through Amazon Web Services. This website is being stored within S3 and hosted using CloudFront, the CDN that hosts actually a lot of the internet. Overall price of this, because there's not many users hitting it, it's about $10 a month. But I'm in the free tier, so it's really not even that expensive. More importantly, on this site, you'll notice this is josephcherry.com. That's a domain that I own that I've imported into Route 53. Route 53 is doing my DNS settings as well as my registrar. Fairly inexpensive to do that. There are a lot of great features in there, and I will be showing you that in just a little bit. Additionally, on this page, you'll see the capstone side. This gives more information on what I've done for my capstone. Originally, I was unaware that there was a WordPress site, so I created this one to show everything that was in it. And in fact, my cat has joined me. Overall, a lot of the same information that is on the WordPress site. Oh, hello, cat. Like I said, freestyle. We're going to roll with it. And in fact, you can link back to the other page. Currently, my video is uploading, so you won't see the same one that I have, but if you do want more information, please check out my website, josephcherry.com, www.josephcherry.com. You'll also see it at the bottom of this page under the Connect to the Project. Now, I suppose while we're here, Bitbucket, you can see my source code once it loads. For my CloudFormation, as well as, and I'll show you these, the YAML document in front of you shows the process for creating the AWS Managed Microsoft Active Directory. Actually, quite weird. This Active Directory is not like standard Active Directory. They don't hand you the administrator account. Rather, they give you an admin account, which is a kind of a delegated account. So they are trying to push, rightly so, least privilege. Even more so, zero trust, because that account, if lost, wouldn't necessarily ruin the company. Under the CloudFormation also, you'll see that I did create a Bastion auto-scaling group. In here, these Bastion hosts are for SSH to connect into other Linux instances if they were to ever be built into the company. Currently, there are none, but something definitely for growth. The core of the network would have to be the VPC, the Virtual Private Cloud. In here, we'll see that we're using a Class A network, multiple subnets, as well as internet gateways, NAT gateways, and routing rules, security groups, the whole shebang. This one did take a little bit of time, but I am happy with the results overall. Finally, the remote desktop gateway. The remote desktop gateway is kind of the core of this project that sits on top of the other core, the VPC. This remote desktop gateway and terminal server combination calls out to custom gold images of Windows machines that have special roles and features installed on them. These gold images then get placed into the VPC, given security groups, given a load balancer on top of them, and from there they can be accessed from around the world, basically. I will be showing you in just a little bit how to log in. I've also given you at the bottom of this page the download and connect documents, so please, I encourage you, for as long as the AWS project is running, try to log in. It would mean a lot. Up next, inside of the Bitbucket is, oh, went too far back. is the website. Just so you can see it, it is here. I've given you the source code. Now, the website itself, this other one, I know I'm jumping around a lot, but this website uses a Creative Commons template by ColorLib. I've also credited everyone who comes up for these other other effects that I'm using, basically. So here's the website. That's everything for Bitbucket. I'd like to show you around AWS itself a little bit. In that documentation that I gave you at the bottom of this page in Google Drive, I have created you a AWS console read-only account that should have access to everything that I'm about to show you, just if you want to look around. But there's no need to, because this video should cover a lot of it. First off, I would say that the CloudFormation is fairly important, so we'll start there. In here, we're running in North Virginia, just because it's a little bit cheaper, and I am paying for this one myself because the school account did not have quite as many resources as I wanted it to, but that's completely okay because I got to learn and do exactly what I needed to do. The first CloudFormation, infrastructure as code, running on those YAML documents that I showed you just a second ago, created the VPC. The VPC is here. Here are all the progress checks. Not too much for the output, just a little bit of what was going on. The subnet names. Definitely I could have made one big document that had all of these steps in it, dependencies and all that, but I figured it'd be better to be able to be more dynamic and to use them as I need them. Microsoft AD also came through, and what I did as a nice little touch was added into the VPC the DHCP scope options. That way all the machines that would join into the VPC would have the correct settings, all the DNS and everything as well. I made a SSM object. I couldn't get this one to quite work, rather annoying, but it's fine. I just manually joined them. Ansible or something would have been the next step if I wanted to have the Microsoft servers auto join into the domain, but considering this was an AWS project, I didn't want to go down that route as well. I did put the password, the domain join secrets, into the secrets catalog just so that we could access that later, just in case somebody forgot. And then again, this one threw me off. It's admin, not administrator. Up next is the remote desktop gateway and terminal server. Again, it goes through, creates your auto load balancers, or your load balancers, the network load balancers, creates your instances, creates your security groups, and your Route 53 rule. So rd.josephcherry.com actually helps get you to the remote desktop gateway. And I'll show you again how that happens in just in a second. Talking about DNS, we'll go to Route 53. Route 53 here has two hosted zones. One of them was a joke. The other one is for the capstone. So you'll see here pip-pip-cheerio.co.uk. I thought that was hilarious, so I had to have it. Good $12. But for the company, josephcherry.com is where everything's going on. The capstone, excuse me. You'll see basic rules. Some of these are checks. The name server, your A record, your, I think it's this certificate of authority? I could be wrong. And your CNAMEs, which is basically redirects. But right here, this was auto-created to the auto load balancer, or the network load balancer. And jumping around again, we'll go check that out. In here, we'll go to the VPC. More specifically, because I think it's a big core of the network. The VPC, there's two of them. Mine is the IT499, and everything is labeled, so it's extra easy to get through there. And here are the DHCP options I was talking about from the YAML documents. 4 subnets, private, public, public, private. 2 availability zones. The load balancer goes between the 2 of them, so there is no, well, in theory, it's highly available. Now, if the big earthquake comes, we'll see what happens. But, you know, when that happens, there's going to be worse things than a capstone offline. NAT gateways for ingress and egress. These do use elastic IPs, so a little bit of added cost there, but not a big deal. And internet gateways so that the machines can actually talk out. Security groups, there are actually quite a few of them. There are some back to my house for RDP. There are some back to the RDGTS terminal server from talk in between each other, even though they're in separate subnets and availability zones, and just a lot of other connections here. I'm not going to go through all of them because there's just a few too many. Up next would be the machines that actually need those rules and are actually placed inside of the VPC. You'll see that we have terminal server 1 and 2, the remote desktop gateway 1 and 2, and they are within different availability zones. So we have US East 1 and US East 1B, 1A, 1B. Only 2 of them are connected to the internet. The other 2 are sitting back into the private subnet, one in the public, or I suppose a set in the public and a set in the private. It's just for a bit of security and a bit of playground area, as I was calling it or considering it. Up next for these, I would say definitely load balancer. The load balancer here, there's one of them created by the YAML document. Inside of here, we have a couple listeners. This again points to the rd.josephcherry.com. The listeners here, 443 and 3389. 3389 over UDP is actually used for video streaming. And without that, you get a very choppy experience because TCP, get your connection. It's going to take a little bit of a work to get a video through. And so talking to the remote desktop gateway actually uses 2 listeners or 2 connections, but still 1 CAL, so a client access license. In this particular case, I'm not actually using any CALs because they give you 120 days free. Perfect for me because I was just testing. I suppose next would be your backup. Backups for this particular case were run on the daily. I would increase that for a real company. And I'm only keeping them for 5 days. Again, I would keep that, especially if you had compliance, for any amount longer than 5 days. But I don't expect very much to be happening here, and I don't expect these machines to be running for too long. Let's go to S3. In S3, we can see that I have the website we were talking about earlier. And in here, we'll see josephcherry.com. Objects can be public. There are some special rules against this. And the josephcherry.com one has the website, images, and other things. There are a few little changes I would make if this was a real company. I would probably not have, for example, my own JavaScript sitting in here. I would probably call it from some other area, or the vendors, for example. Why do I have Bootstrap in here? It's because it's part of the template. In reality, you'd want to pull it in and not host it yourself, because that just ends up being a lot of extra bandwidth. But this is the website. You connect to the website from CloudFront. CloudFront is the CDN. The CDN uses the origin right here of this website from the S3 bucket. This origin doesn't have to be an S3 bucket, but it was convenient and inexpensive for me. And I figured since it's not a dynamic website, just a static website, it's perfect for what I'm trying to do. This CloudFront also is able to use custom SSLs. Luckily enough, AWS will give you free SSL for these kind of experiences. Now, if you do need a certificate authority, which is different, still an SSL or a TLS, but the certificate authority technically is a paid thing. It's actually kind of expensive. And so that was a problem that I ran into while doing this. And instead of buying it, because that's ridiculous, I used something called Let's Encrypt. Let's Encrypt is a free service that is trying to push SSL everywhere. And so they have their own trusted certificate authority, you ask them, hey, I need a cert. They go, okay, great. Here's a cert for 90 days. Re-up it with us soon. And then if there's any foul play, they just rip out your cert. Very good service. There's something called Certify the Web, which is a service that can run on a Windows machine. There's other ones for Linux. I don't remember the name off the top of my head. But those services can basically just auto refresh that cert when you get near your time, which is really, really good. Let's see. We don't have too much else to talk about here. I would say the RDS was not used in this project. Let's talk about, Cost Explorer. Let's see how everything is looking. Now, as it shows on the websites, plural, the cost of this is about $345 a month. That's fine because I'm only going to run it for a couple of weeks. But for a company, your relative cost is not that high, especially when you don't have to put so much down to start your technology venture, right? An average client of ours will have easily 12 grand worth of hardware, 20 grand worth of hardware. Now excluding internet service as well as networking hardware, as well as, those two, because those would be required for 100% cloud. You'd still have to connect to the internet. You also have to consider the fact that there's probably air conditioning in the server room. There's going to be battery backups in the server room. There's going to be things of that nature, which increase the price. And you only end up with one server room, exactly one server room, typically. So doing it my way, you end up with 2 availability zones. So if one of those zones goes down, well, you still have your stuff. You might work at a diminished capacity, but you're not working at 0% capacity, which is much, much better. And as we saw on the website, $345 is a lot better than $400 for doubling your server room, not even including the physical space of renting the building or any of those other things I talked about. So economy at scale is definitely working for Amazon, and I can see a lot of accountants and a lot of money people not wanting to just drop 20 grand on hardware for stuff like this when they could pay for a service. Yes, eventually, it's a death by 1,000 cuts. You're going to run out of, you'll never get away from paying for the service. But that's a business decision to be made, and I think that the benefits of having AWS really do offset that. Now, if we look, we'll go into the Cost Explorer, and we see that I've been playing with this for a couple months, but I'm going to set it to the last 7 days. And in the last 7 days, it's cost me $32, I believe, just off the top of my head. I probably turned this on the 20th, roughly around the 20th. So that'd be 7 days ago. In 7 days, it's been mostly EC2 instances as well as EC2 other. EC2 other typically means VPC. For some reason, they don't separate that, but it's things like the Elastic IPs, and it's things like the NAT gateways, and it's the load balancer and that kind of thing. Luckily enough, I'm still under the free tier as well as trial for things like the directory services, which is where we're going to go now. Directory services is one of those things that's always kind of hidden. 1 second. I think I put it in here. Yeah, directory service. Directory service, so this is my Active Directory machine, and there's not really much you can do with it. I pointed it to some subnets, I've given it the VPC, and it ends up not really giving you access. It doesn't give you, here are the 2 domain controllers that your entire company runs on. Instead, you have to excuse me, you have to connect in onto another Windows machine, then join the domain that they're pushing out, then manage the domain using a domain administrator account, or rather a delegated administrator account. But you can see that I have the directory name correct and the NetBIOS in there as well. So I think the next thing to show you would be the user experience. And so this is where things I think get really interesting. For the user, especially for a Windows user, all you have to do is give them a remote desktop icon. And there's a few of them, and for some reason these are way off to the side, but there's two machines that host the terminal server or the remote desktop services. And the remote desktop services in this case, you can see here that we have TS1 and TS1. So this is the same computer, but the username is CSUCI Capstone User as well as Capstone User 2. Under here, the other side as well, you have TS2, so the second terminal server, and the second terminal server with user 3 and user 4. Using standardized usernames like this is not what I would prefer. I would like to have everyone have their own username, but because I don't know who's connecting, I have to give out these generic accounts. Now, under Advanced for the remote desktop options, there's something called Connect from Anywhere, and this is where you put your remote desktop gateway settings in. The remote desktop gateway settings end up being rd.josephcherry.com, and you would check this little box that says use my RD gateway credentials for the remote computer. That is because these RDS and RDG servers are connected to the domain. So they authenticate to the domain, give your user account the permissions to get in, and it joins you all the way in. So I will pull up quickly the password here for these accounts. And so we'll join here. Just double checks that the SSL is correct. And you wouldn't get in without the Let's Encrypt side. And so here we go. Here we're going to join in with Capstone User 0. Give it a second. And now we've been given our thank you for using the Capstone information. You'll be signed off in 20 minutes. You're just connected with RDG2. This is important because the load balancer doesn't really care which one it hands you to, but both RDGs can talk to both terminal servers. But if one of the terminal servers is down, it will fail over to the other side. Welcome to the cloud. So here we are. We're in under user 0, and then the same machine, I'm going to press connect, allow, put in the password, and press OK. Give it another second, and we're in. We again use RDG2, that's fine. That's doing the licensing as well. RDG1 also does licensing, so passing out those Windows CALs, but that's fine. You'll notice the machines aren't active. Technically this is testing, so it's under Microsoft's OK period, so that's not a problem. And I can do the same thing with these other two machines, but what we have currently, and I'll just split these up, is that the machine on the left is CSUCI user, Capstone user, CSUCI Capstone, CSUCI Capstone user 1, different user accounts, same machine. So this ts1.80josephcherry.com. Ignore this name because I saved it like that. And if we scroll down, we can actually go into the task manager and see that Windows is doing two users at the same time. So what does that mean? That means that we have true, multi-user running in a Windows environment, which is absurdity because Windows doesn't do multi-user. Linux does multi-user, Windows does not. And this, similar to how Citrix does it, allows us to have a server farm in the cloud that anyone can connect to. I'll touch on that in a second. That then allows them to do their work from any machine. Doesn't allow them to take away anything out of the network, but also allows them to work with the tools and management that I provide as an IT guy to them. Now, I said I would touch on that later, and what I was meaning was that the security of this could be further enhanced by using something like conditional access built into Microsoft 365. Now, if you didn't want to use Microsoft 365 offering, you could use something like Duo, like what we have at the school. Further from that, you could use something like Okta. Okta is a big leader in security provision right now. They are identity providers as well as integrators, so that's a direction that could definitely be gone in. I'm just going to log out of these really quick. Let's see here. Trying to think what else. I could show you the back end of this even further. Let's sign out here. I don't need these anymore. And we have in fact, I will bring up this document is kind of the source of truth for what's going on. And you can see everything that I've worked on. We've talked about CloudFront. We've talked about load balancer for RDG. That was the load balancer we made through the YAML documents through CloudFormation. The automated backups were done through AWS Backup. Microsoft hosted Active Directory is in there. Route 53 for name resolution, CloudFormation, custom gold AMI images. We talked about that briefly. Security groups for least privilege. And we are now running 100% cloud company. This has room for expansion. You could go and do whatever you want. You could bring in more modern systems. I understand that what I've done is essentially used AWS as a hypervisor, basically. Really nothing much more advanced than that. But pair this with containerization, pair this with machine learning, pair this with a handful of other services that AWS offers, and you would have the foundation for almost any startup. You just have to get a couple DevOps people in there and some people who know what they're doing programming wise, and you would have a solid, I think, a solid foundation for a technology company or any company. This has been really interesting for me because many of our clients don't have AWS accounts, and if they do, they're using it strictly for websites. So being able to dynamically move and to make that mobile workforce and to get rid of the server room on premise is something that is new and emerging for the managed security service provider that I work for. And it's been really interesting learning all of these things and getting my hands on it. So I really did enjoy that. That's also why I kept with the Microsoft stuff, because that's what we use most of the time. But I hope you had a good look of what's going on here. Not really sure what else to add, so I think that's everything. Please do connect if you have your CSUCI email. As I said, this will get you in. You can try it out, and leave a comment. It's important to me. Thanks.